Let's go ahead and get started and talk about what we learned at TAS Summit in 2018. And not everything in here is super formal about what we learned. There we go. This webinar is brought to you by Redgate. And today, let's do what's your favorite stat on this slide? My favorite stat on this slide is the 582 product releases so far this year. I love that at Redgate, we build tools to enable DevOps, and boy, do we do DevOps as well. So this number is low. This number is from a couple weeks ago. The number is absolutely higher today.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's amazing that how much we deploy. How about you guys? What's your favorite stat?
So I'll say the 4 million visits each year because I do a lot of those.
Well, I think that the average age being 19 years old is probably not accurate.
It might be. It might be.
Redgaters, right?
No. Just kidding.
I was really slow on that joke, but I totally believed you. So for the audience, Redgate is 19 years old. And I should know that because there's a bunch of people wearing sweatshirts that have 18 on the back. And I was like, 18 what? 18 years. That was last year. All right, so on to what we learned, or actually first who we are. My name is Kendra Little. I am the newest evangelist on the Redgate team, and I can show my true corgi enthusiasm today with my mug. Who are you people?
Yeah, so I'm Steve Jones, and I run SQL Server Central, and then I'm an evangelist for Redgate, and probably a lot of you have seen me somewhere at some event sometime.
And I'm Grant Fritchey. I'm a product evangelist for Redgate, and I'm the president of PASS. Doggone it, that and $1.50 will get you half a cup of coffee.
That is very, very relevant to today's presentation, however, because it does explain why the first slide we're going into here involves Grant with some stormtroopers. So Grant, what were you doing here? How did this happen?
Sorry, I was just getting my coffee mug. Honest to God, this was a surprise. The HQ people put together this thing where they got the Star Wars as part of the V20 celebration, and so when we had the reception party, the V20 celebration party, they told me, "Oh, it's Star Wars," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." And they're like, "Yeah, and we're gonna have you walked out flanked by stormtroopers." I was like, "And you have a Darth Vader costume, right?"
I like that you suggested that you be Vader.
Yeah, but then they said no, and so I'm like all bummed. I'm thinking like, okay, well, I'll walk out with stormtroopers, it'll be fine. And then the guys running the thing, they're like, "Oh, you can borrow our Vader costume." Okay.
It really worked. It really worked with your outfit. There was this year, the V20 party there. I think for the first time ever, there was free beer at the PASS welcome party. And it actually worked really well, I thought. Like there was no weird shenanigans. It was just really fun. And the vendors were able to give out free beer. So I thought that was actually a very nice innovation at PASS.
Well, and not only did the vendors give out free beer, I mean, we walked through this and got it all set up. It was a chance for the vendors to share and help out, but there was no requirements that anybody dance or sing or do anything crazy for the vendor to get the free beer. It was just the vendors are there. If you want to talk to them, great, but they're giving out free beer, so it was free beer, and I got my mug too. It's PASS V20.
I thought that was actually, I've been to the welcome party a few times. I thought it was the best welcome party I've ever been to. I had some good conversations. I enjoyed it. It was a good way to kick off the summit. Other things that, next slide, the keynote the next day. So the day one keynote, I was in the audience at the blogger table for the day one keynote, and there was a lot that we covered in the keynote, and I just have we have some highlights in this deck. So I took these photos from the blogger table. Grant was backstage, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of different from backstage.
I did have to do the welcome, but it was pretty cool. But I'll tell you, this keynote was one of the most technical ones that they've done. I was blown away just by all the toys they brought out.
Yes. There were a lot of demos, and I took a very unofficial poll after like the first day and second day, and asked people like of the day one keynote of all the stuff they showed, what did you get really excited about? And everyone except for one person picked the thing that's on, like that Connor Cunningham and Bob Ward showed that day. They only were up there for like 2 minutes, but essentially what they showed is a demo, a really quick demo that's not even in preview yet. I don't think it's snuck in since past released, but basically they have said, hey, let's take some of the magic of NMemory OLTP and use it for those system tables in TempDB that have been prone to latch contention, because, hey, one of the things that NMemory OLTP solves is latch contention. There won't be anything people need to do to enable this. It's simply purely behind the scenes. It will be in SQL Server 2019. And this is the thing that everyone was like, oh, I'm really excited about that TempDB thing. Even though it was just like a 2-minute demo, everybody was like, I don't want to have to worry about that anymore. And it really seemed to hit home with people. So it's funny what strikes people. But yeah, just that 2-minute demo really resonated with people.
Yeah, I got to say, so I wasn't there. I was just watching because I was getting ready to fly. But I did make a note that was one of the things that caught my eye was in-memory used across all workloads, because they're kind of spreading in-memory technology across different parts of SQL Server. And I don't think it's just TempDB that we're going to see it in, but certainly that's the highlight place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone mentioned. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in MSDB and some of the other stuff. I mean, all their internal management. I wouldn't be shocked at all if it, Query Store maybe even. That would be neat.
Someone in my pre-con mentioned to me that there's some part of Query Store that it's already used in. And this came up because my pre-con was on isolation levels. And in one section of the pre-con, I talk about in-memory OLTP and isolation levels, because one of the awesome things about in-memory OLTP is like, you can't have dirty reads. Like, it's just not only not an option, it's actually impossible the way that it's designed. You can't have any of the problems in read committed. Like, the lowest form of isolation that you can have is snapshot isolation. You can then go higher. But my demo, there was some hilarity that ensued with my demo, but one of the people in the audience mentioned, hey, I think this is actually used in Query Store, not the unexpected parts of the demo. Yeah, it blew up in the demo.
Yeah.
But everything went well. It was all recovered.
Oh, sorry. Well, this
no, it was actually
my favorite thing, actually.
Oh,
I think this is.
I was like, isolation levels are your favorite thing? Tell me more.
No. I was thinking the TempDB thing wasn't my favorite. I think this was, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Lindsay Allen got to demo some more cool stuff too. I am a big fan of Lindsay Allen, maybe because her Twitter handle is Herd Cats, but she got to show accelerated database recovery. Is this your favorite thing, Grant?
Yes.
Why is this your favorite thing?
I don't know. It's just the whole idea of backup and restore. I mean, I know that we focus so much on DevOps, and I really believe in DevOps, and I'm a huge fan, and I love query tuning and all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, I spent a lot of years as a DBA, and my God, please let me restore things faster, if at all. But please, faster would be great. So this was just so cool. Especially the Azure stuff, but in general, it's just wicked cool.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I still wonder how much they've exaggerated how fast this is, right? Microsoft can throw hardware at problems in ways that we can't sometimes.
Right.
So I'm slightly skeptical of how well this will work and how widely it'll be deployed to all of us, but it is exciting to see this. I do definitely want to learn more, because I'm curious if this is going to be like Hackathon, that there'll be all these weird edge cases that prevent most of us from using it, Right. So we'll see.
What's the real overhead of turning it on?
Right.
Because it's got to do things behind the scene with
right. Like you need triple your database size to make this work or something.
Right. There should be some trade-off in the log size. Like, there is going to be a trade-off in data file size, but because of the way it can truncate, of course, if it's working properly, because of the way it can truncate the log more. If you have long running transactions, maybe there's just, you're sort of moving the space used to different places, which could be fine actually. But yeah, I'm really interested to see it. But so the use case that this will really help with is if you have long running transactions in your database, this is really designed so that if you have a power outage, if you have a failover, if you have something unexpected happen, you shouldn't be sitting there waiting for it to come online saying, is it, you know, with someone behind you usually, right? When is it going to be online? When is it going to be online? And you're just looking at it and you're like, what? I don't know what to do. Which when I was a new DBA led to people doing things like, well, it's taking a long time to come online, so let's restart it again.
Right.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
Which is
yeah.
wonderful.
Because
Now, I wonder.
reboot will help.
Yeah, I wonder how much the second, in the second keynote with Raghu, I'm getting butcher's name, Ramakrishnan.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about some of this on the second one, more with HA, that we're going to have this log as a service kind of thing where we're pushing this stuff out, and that you can spend money on the log if the log is your pain point, as opposed to having to spend money on everything, right?
Right.
So
makes sense as a concept, because there are some applications where, yeah, it being online all the time isn't that big a deal, because maybe we've got data cached somewhere, right? Like but then there's other apps where it's really, really critical that they be online fast. I don't think addition has been announced for this. This is the kind of feature, since it's not a programmability feature, and programmability features are the ones that have trickled down to lower editions. This is the kind of one that I would just guess, I mean, no inside knowledge here at all, but I would just guess this one's going to be an enterprise feature for on-prem. Just that would make sense to me if I was designing it, but I don't think we have an announcement.
Yeah,
Especially 'cause I don't think there's any way they could throttle it, like give you half of it, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, I think it's enterprise, and this is one I wonder if actually will not be SQL 2019. If it'll still be just in Azure next year, but we'll see.
Yeah,
that is an interesting question. That is a fun question to think about. For people who do want to check it out, it is currently in preview. You can play around with that. And then we also, this is still day one keynote that we're going through. There were a lot of demos here. This demo was all about SQL data warehouse being faster than ever and processing over 1 trillion rows a second and being hyped as less expensive. So they seem to be doing a lot of work to try to attract folks to SQL data warehouse there.
Well, the interesting thing is not all this stuff. And it wasn't in the demos either. The interesting thing is now that SQL Data Warehouse has changed its connection model so that they're expanding the number of connections that you're going to be able to have on it simultaneously.
And next slide. That's the man. I love it. Since we can have all these connections to it, this is the thing that I thought was like, oh, that's really interesting, because I have never been, like in the main engine, I have never been a huge fan of resource governor for sort of throttling people, because just like slowing someone down and making them hold locks for longer doesn't necessarily mean good news for the people who aren't slowed down if they're being blocked by the people who are slowed down, right? This seems more like it's like the queue order of just who gets to start, and saying we are going to queue people back and they don't even get to start, but then other things get prioritized and jump the queue, which strikes me as being if you're going to manage prioritization, strikes me as being a better way to do it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I like Resource Governor, but I think just the tooling was god awful, and trying to understand what you're setting up and who is where. And for most of us, we had to change our security model to say, now I put people in all these weird groups that allow me to segregate workload. Because, Resource Governor doesn't govern me if there's nobody else competing, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Theory.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like Workload Governor or Resource Governor 2.0. Mm-hmm. I still wonder how are they actually going to be able to take somebody that's in process, and when they come out of CPU, pause them, give them a lower priority so that the next thing can restart, because there's still so many threads and things in place that I kind of wonder how well this will work, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing with Resource Governor that always got me is I would shoot myself in the foot with Resource Governor, because when it first came out, I really thought when Resource Governor first came out, I thought it was going to solve all my problems. managed to screw things up. But I always had a hard time figuring out, is something like, okay, somebody's saying this is slow. Is it being governed now, and has it been governed in the past? There needs to be a way to tell who has been deprioritized, how long did they wait for that? And so hopefully the dashboard and service will take care of that. We'll see. Right?
Yeah, maybe we'll see. I mean, I think for most of us, I think resource government was really everybody's in one pool, and probably here too. And then the CEO and the CFO are in a second pool, and that's what I really care about. That's the only thing I care about.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's what we used to do. But we did have like we had a clown car server where we put everybody with low SLAs, and then we put restrictions on them inside the clown car.
Yeah, it was clown cars where I tried to use this on it, but they could still use all the buffer pool, right? And there was this early stuff like, oh, you can limit memory, but I didn't understand that it was only query workspace memory, not buffer pool memory. And there's all this complex stuff. So
it was definitely a mess.
So hopefully it's simpler. Mike asks, will it be possible to get a copy of the deck? Absolutely. We can figure out a way to share that afterwards. Sure thing. Can do in terms of that. So next feature that we saw was from Deepsha Mingani, whose name hopefully I am not deploying too bad. And this was the very cool demo of Shell and the safety system with the predictive alert. So there were a couple of things in this demo I thought were amazing. I love notebooks. So Jupyter notebooks are something that really is coming into play in Azure for analysis and being able to very quickly run code against data sets for interpretation. But I thought it was also just a great customer demo about how there's real world problems. Like, we want to figure out how can we have something taking the view of cameras at gas stations and with automation very quickly identifying signs of danger that might cause the gas station to explode. And she explained that for her testing, she couldn't just burn down a gas station, which I thought was a very, very good point.
I wanted to argue with her on that, though, because I used to work for a company that burned things down for testing. It's what they did. I'm sure we could have gotten a gas station set up.
I feel like this is something that happens in New Mexico in the desert. Like, that's specifically an industry in some parts of the country. So maybe she just needs to test it. But she did a live demo for us that didn't involve a gas station.
Didn't involve fire.
Yeah.
It did involve fire, but she did note that it was not a real cigarette. There must have been a discussion behind the scenes as to whether someone was allowed to smoke a real cigarette on stage. So she had a fake burning cigarette and she held it up in front of a camera, and the classification worked for her.
So what does that say about the classification, that it doesn't work very well because we can fake it out easily? Is that
I think even someone smoking a small fake cigarette at a gas station is a concern, because it could still cause the gas station.
At the very least, they're going to cause panic. So
yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't love this model or this thing just because it feels like this is a place where I don't necessarily need a model close to a bunch of data, right? Like, this is something new coming in. The image should be, the model should be trained. This is more of an application level thing that shouldn't impact my database to do this work. But it is an interesting look at how technology might be helping us, right? Of course, there's the flip side of it. It's kind of the 1984-ish view of we're watching everything you do, which I don't love.
Yeah. So I think this is useful for data people to know about, specifically because if I'm thinking about how to do this, I might assume, oh my goodness, I have to collect all of this data in my database somehow. And in my database, I have to identify this, where your point is true. Like, this does not have to be identified within the database. It should be able to be identified elsewhere. And then the stuff that actually maybe ends up in the database is the points at which it identifies problems, right? Some of the more critical points in a relational database. So
tracking issues.
Having the knowledge of this could help you prevent doing things in the database that you don't necessarily need to do.
Yeah. So I didn't love the demo for that reason. It feels like it's an odd one for the data platform side of things, but I guess they're including all the cognitive services stuff as well, right?
Yeah. So that was any other highlights from the keynotes, I should ask. So that is the last slide I have on highlights at the keynote. So, and I've now gone back into it there.
Too far. Yeah.
I'm trying to PowerPoint my way out of this. So did you have other moments that were your favorites from the keynotes that I did not capture?
Yeah.
For instance, I don't have any slides in here from day 2 even.
So I mean, day 2, and I know that there are questions, so I don't want to get into the discussion. But the history of SQL Server that came out was a unique moment that only happened at PASS, will only happen at PASS, and will never happen again. That I thought was really cool. Just that moment of Kumert and all the other guys up there on stage, literally sharing stories. They were doing it backstage too, by the way. I didn't really want to leave to stop the conversations. But it was pretty cool listening to these guys, talk about everything that happened over the years that, and the realization that, oh my God, I've been working with SQL Server since they started it, was really a shocker for me. I didn't realize I was quite that old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a few things, I think. So it was neat to see them say hybrid cloud is first, kind of, right? Because I think for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been hearing Azure from Microsoft, cloud. And I think them recognizing that hybrid at best is what is really there is good to see. But in the second day, Raghu actually said he saw the cloud as this tectonic shift in how we can do things in the future, which I kind of agree with. I think the flexibility and elasticity of the cloud are things that we can't do on premise. We don't have this ability to be as adaptive and quickly move hardware around in our data centers in ways that we can do in the cloud. And that can fundamentally change how we architect, put some things together.
Right.
Because when I watched the second day and they're separating out data from compute, right, which Azure Data Warehouse has, which I think is fantastic. And I think the big data cluster thing is kind of, we're doing that on premise if that ever gets done. But the idea of being able to separate out your log from your data, from your compute, and separate that out for high availability in multiple systems, most of us could never build that on premise. I know Andy Kelly is here. Andy might be able to, because I know Andy is the only guy I know with, I think, 4 terabytes in a server or something. That he has a hardware budget where he could do that. Most of us can't do that. Right? If we ask for, if we were to ask for 50 virtual machines to do this spread, it wouldn't be an easy thing for many of us to do.
Well, just showing somebody Azure SQL Database and showing geo-replication, one line of PowerShell, right? Or 2 if you want to set up the server, right? So 2 lines of PowerShell, and oh, by the way, now you're replicating geographically, and it's got 15 millisecond loss, or no, 25 millisecond loss.
Right.
I mean,
which is amazing.
Could I build that?
Yeah, but
maybe if you gave me a lot of money, a lot of time.
A lot of money, a lot of time, and once you'd built it, you'd be stuck with whatever you'd done, right? And the cloud fundamentally changes that. Right, because there's this huge scale, and not everybody can build 1,000 servers, right? Because if everybody does that, then Azure will run out of resources. But for those of us that might need it for a short period of time, it would be amazing, And so I think the cloud is really, it gives us options that weren't possible before.
Yeah. So we got a couple of comments. Frank says that Grant isn't old; he's just well seasoned.
Yeah.
Frank, you are a very kind man.
I'll give you your payment later.
Yeah. Andy says, I have about 8 with 4 terabytes.
Yeah, Andy has bragging.
A lot. He just wants you to know.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think he's bragging. I think that's
So for that, most of you probably don't know Andy Kelly, but he is an MVP with us, and we know him well. And he works. The questions he posts on the MVP list about warehousing stuff are just, it's like, wow, how do you find these problems?
Yeah.
You have these huge machines.
I think he means 4 terabytes of memory, not disk space, just to clarify.
Correct.
That 4
Yes,
terabytes of
yes.
disk space, not that unusual. 4 terabytes of memory, you're like, yeah, I don't see that every day.
Yeah. It's 4 terabytes of memory and lots and lots and lots of disk space. So
Yeah.
that's fundamental. So the other thing I saw in the keynote, it's not to hijack too long, Kendra,
Oh, no,
but
it's fine.
I think containers are really going to be important for us moving forward. Like I've been so skeptical of this for 2 years. I've been having conversations with Travis Wright at Microsoft and others across many events. I've seen Travis and a few other people at different events all around the world, including Mike Redmond. And every time I talk to him and others, I get a little more convinced that they're starting to be a bigger deal. And I know for the three of us, we were with Bob Ward at the SQL in the Cities.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff where he talks about with containers and Kubernetes, I'm starting to think, wow, I think this is actually something we might want to use moving forward, which I haven't felt until this year.
I did my demo. So I had a main pass session on Friday where I was talking about function. I wasn't talking about containers. I did all my demos in a container. And at one point just mentioned it offhand. It wasn't even relevant to the session, but it was like, oh yeah, by the way, this is all running in a Docker container, just because it was really, it's a preview version of SQL Server, really convenient for me to download and deploy it that way. I mean, it was really easy even for me to do it that way. So when we're talking about, especially everything in dev and test, super attractive in terms of being able to manage your environment with code. But even the stuff they're coming out with these Kubernetes pods for production and being able to leverage some of the functionality of containers instead of just relying on like the listener in an always on configuration is kind of attractive.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know Kendra, she is an MCM. So please don't let her say only me can do it. Right? Kendra is brilliant. Right.
Well, I mean,
Kendra does things we can't do.
Let me say this though. I like when it comes to Linux, I'm just like, right? I am not a Linux person at all, and I'm running Linux in a container on Docker without bad things happening. Like you have
a Linux PhD in the house, so let's be clear.
This is non-related pass news, or this didn't come out at pass. This is sort of unrelated news, but Microsoft, it looks like, is going to build sysinternals tools that work on Linux as well as on Windows. So for those people who are used to using these tools to troubleshoot Windows, it is, I think, a fantastic news that you may be able to use these tools to understand Linux. It's a way, I think, of helping people used to the Microsoft platform bridge that gap. So I wouldn't be surprised if the level of Linux administration goes up in the data platform world significantly.
Right. And here's the other thing. So I didn't know this, but Bob Ward told me this a few weeks ago. The Windows containers in Docker have a limit in resources. Right? There's a CPU RAM limit that is fundamental right now until the Windows Docker people kind of figure it out. On Linux, there's no resource limit on containers. So if you were to run a 100 core, 98 core, 4 terabyte container, you could do that on Linux right now.
Right.
So I think it's kind of amazing. And actually at Redgate, we're actually doing a bunch of work with containers. I don't know if you two have seen it, but the Foundry group has their project Spawn. So if you go to redgate.com/foundry, there's I think they call it, the project is called like Future of DevOps. I don't know what it is, but they're doing some really neat stuff with containers there that I've been following along, which is kind of cool, I think. And so between that and Bob Ward and Microsoft, I'm starting to think containers are probably something we should learn better.
I think I think it's a good thing. Like that's something I would love to see integrated into our provision product, for example. I think it's a natural fit with provision for containers to have a story in there. I mean, you don't have to use them, but for it to be an option in there too, to have the benefit. Because when you do, it's easy to copy and deploy containers, but everyone has a copy of the data. So being able to virtualize the data and deploy them quickly without having a copy of the data in everyone would be very attractive to me.
Yeah, to be fair, provision is kind of negates the need for containers a little bit, but I understand what you're saying, and I feel the same way a little bit. So
cool. I think
I mean all of containers and DevOps. I mean, it's just it's such a natural connection between the two. That bit I understand more than I've never quite. Still, even after talking to Bob, getting the really, I'd put a container in production.
Yeah. Why? So the one case I'll tell you that Travis convinced me on was, what about applying a CU? And he said, you know what? I can switch CUs instantly in a container. And if I haven't revved the database version, I can instantly switch back. I can't do that in VMs or in other ways.
Does the same go for a
Interesting.
service pack, though? So for this thinking through containers, so if folks aren't familiar with containers, part of what it virtualizes for you is like the operating system and the binaries. So you can do things like upgrade some of the binaries quickly, but things like service packs actually do write to the database. And I'm thinking that I don't know if you can just apply a service.
No, you couldn't do it.
I don't know yet.
You couldn't do it with a service pack because you'd rev the database. So I couldn't go backwards. I can do it though. So the key is the downtime between switching containers is much lower than it is with any other technology. Right? Because I could apply the service pack to the container. Right? And what I do is I stop this container, restart this one, pointing to the same storage, and I'm back up in seconds. I mean, orders of magnitude faster than I could any other technology.
Yeah. I love the dog commentary. I feel like dog has a lot to say about containers. They want the container filled with kibble.
I know, I'm surprised mine haven't come down, but
she's still going. I've got it muted.
I actually, like, my dog is just sleeping on the couch, and I'm really surprised he doesn't have a response.
Yeah.
All right, we are actually doing great on time. We have 30 minutes left. I think we can come back to this too. I did want to include some of the booth stuff because this was the first conference where I actually got to be like hanging out at a booth. I've never had a booth before at a conference, so I spent a lot more time at the booth than I ever have before. And it was really fun. There were, because I'm still getting up to speed on a lot of things with advanced concepts and Redgate tools. And there were a lot of just great discussions. So this was a discussion between Grant and Deborah, a community member, just about different things you run into when you're trying to apply DevOps in the real world. Like you come into confrontation with existing processes and you have to figure out, okay, do we need to like redo everything in the process, or is there a way we can kind of build DevOps into our existing process slowly and like use some of this tooling to make it better without redoing the whole process? Just really, really interesting discussions. So I learned a lot from actually hearing on this one. Like I was talking to Deborah and I really don't know. Let's find Grant. So it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, but the bad news is I didn't know either. She's got a hard problem to solve. I mean, we're not going to get into the details of anyone else's stuff because that's bad. But it's a difficult problem to solve, and it's going to be a challenge to move to DevOps, because the hard part on DevOps, as we've all said a million times, is the culture, not the technology. I mean, we're ready for you guys. When you guys are ready, come on over. We'll hook you up. But that's the conversation that we had was all about culture.
Yeah, but I think this is the magic of conferences is you have a really hard problem. You're searching online and you're like, nobody has the same exact pattern as me. You go to a conference and there's a ton of people who you can talk to figure out, is there something I'm missing that would be like a really simple fix for this that just isn't that obvious because of X, Y, and Z. And you can have these discussions where you really work that out. And that's why showing up in person is worth it, I think, because, a lot of these talks you can watch online. So I think a lot of the magic happens with those conversations. Another thing we did that was super fun was Grant and the editors of his book got to do a book signing. This is just a small picture of the line. The line started really, really early, and it was a line.
There were two.
It had to double up.
Well, no, we did because we did two different book signings, so there was two different lines. You missed the second one. You weren't there to take every single person's picture.
Yeah, I started my career as an amateur phone photographer by taking photos of people with Grant and Tony and Hugo, which some people were like, no photo, please.
No one should know I was ever here.
I don't want these guys in a picture with me. picture with me. And I also got to sit in on demos at the Redgate booth, which I had never done before, which was also quite a lot of fun too. Now I'm like, I even know people in the background of this photo, but I had a ton of fun hanging out at the booth this year. That was actually, and of course, as you can see here, at one point, Hamish came by with his inflatable dolphin.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Kendra, for doing that, because I was at the booth for like 30 minutes total. So I'm glad you were there.
Couldn't get to the booth.
I couldn't get to the booth. That's fair.
Steve was in the Expo Hall. He was walking towards the booth, but people kept coming up to him and talking to him. Like he could go like 2 steps.
Yeah, it was a very hectic week, or a few days, I guess.
Yeah, 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
You parachuted in, parachuted out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you do what you can with the conference.
Yeah.
I honestly think PASS is tiring enough that 2 days is.
Yeah, it was an action-packed 2 days for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm jealous. 2 days.
You can get a lot out of 2 days with it being, I was there for I did the SQL train going up, which, by the way, for people watching, if you are considering going to the PASS Summit in the future, typically before PASS in Portland, Oregon, a SQL Saturday is thrown. So if you are like, no, I don't want 2 days, I want more, you can do that for fairly cheap by flying to Oregon on, say, Friday, maybe landing late on the Friday before, coming to our SQL Saturday in Portland, which is free. Of course, you're going to have to pay a little bit of hotel, but you can work it out with maybe an Airbnb or something for cheap. You get a whole day of training there, and a lot of the presenters from PASS come down and do this SQL Saturday as well. So it's hard to make all the sessions at the summit. You can start your networking, start your conversations, get to know people at the SQL Saturday. And then on the Sunday, we have, for a couple years, had a SQL train, which now I'm forgetting the name of the organizer. If anyone, is it Chris?
Chris Hyde.
Yes,
Chris Hyde.
Thank you. He's been organizing this where we actually, he asks people if they want to do it. And when people commit, he reserves entire cars on the Amtrak going up from Portland to Seattle. So it's another great way to talk to people, get to know it. I did it this year and it was really fun. So consider that if you are thinking about doing PASS in the future, because it actually really is a great way to make friends, learn stuff, and get more involved in the community in a really low pressure situation. So I thought that was really fun this year. But by the end of the PASS, I was exhausted. Deeply exhausted. But that did not stop me from attending a couple of sessions. My favorite session that I attended was on intelligent query processing by these 2 fellows. This is Pedro Lopes and Joe Sack, and they have done a lot in the intelligent query processing space. I live tweeted their entire session. So if you want to know the details on, they covered the history of intelligent query processing in SQL Server, as well as a lot of the new stuff. And there were things in there I did not know about. Okay, for wait stats and execution plans, how many get displayed? And what's the criteria for being in that list? And a lot of those details, if you want to dig in, are in that Twitter.
I just wanted to, can you go back? It looks like Joe is wearing a long skirt. Is that what that? Oh, it's a jacket.
No, that's a jacket.
It's his jacket.
I thought that was a perfect picture, though, Kendra, of Joe in a skirt. If anybody knows Joe, just go ahead and send him a note that we think he's wearing a skirt. He should wear a skirt, actually. We like that.
The table is wearing a skirt,
yeah,
and the chair is wearing a jacket.
I was thinking this was kilt day, and Joe just went crazy with the kilt, is what I thought.
That would have been great.
That would have been great.
Query processing in a skirt.
There we go.
Couple highlights from now. They're changing what actual execution plans look like and moving more information into that. Also, trace flag info is going in there as well. Part of how what they're doing this is because when people report cases to Microsoft and they get escalated, they would be looking at an execution plan and interpreting an execution plan and not knowing, hey, what was the query waiting on? Or what statistics were involved in this and how recently were they updated? Not knowing that, you've got to do a lot of back and forth, which is the same thing a lot of DBAs hit. So they're fixing this to help them, which is in turns out the same pain point that a lot of DBAs have.
Right.
We also got a bunch of new features coming in 2019 that a lot of us are really excited about. The inlineable scalar functions feature. This is one thing that I actually think is so awesome and so cool. They didn't show this in the keynotes, and I was really disappointed because I was like, if people liked that TempDB thing, they're going to be insane for the fact that all of the issues we've had with scalar user-defined functions over the years, where they prevent parallelism in an execution plan, they perform really, really slowly, do a lot of row-by-row operations. Those are all being fixed because the logic from even very complex scalar functions can now be brought into the query itself so that SQL Server can actually make a smart decision about how to run the query. This is going to be huge for a lot of people with existing code bases and essentially mean that things are just going to be faster without you changing any code. And it's going to be amazing. So I'm really.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, we've seen some of the intelligent querying stuff come through in 2017, right? And we were all at SQL in the City with Bob Ward, and he had this diagram. I don't know if he showed it anywhere, but the tree diagram with all the different things that they're doing for the query processing.
Mm-hmm.
Did he show that in past too?
Joe, I think Pedro showed it in the kind of history. One of them showed it. Yeah.
But there's like 12 things on that list, right? And there were like 4 in 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're adding like another 5 or 6, and then there's still a few more coming. And it's amazing because as I've watched a few people try to demo this stuff, it's incredibly difficult to show this stuff because it just works.
Right.
Right. Like you have to go through all these, machinations of trying to come up with a scenario to show how it's different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Approximate count distinct hasn't gotten a lot. Approximate count distinct is a new feature, and I actually think there was the great thing about this session is there was a lot of discussion of why would you want this. So approximate count distinct, for example, if you've got a dashboard, say a monitoring dashboard, and you don't need the exact number to show, but you're just showing a trend, approximate count distinct is magnitudes faster than doing a normal count distinct. And if what you just want to show is a shape and a trend, it's suitable for that situation. The number's just going to be in the ballpark of being right. But for a lot of use cases, this is going to mean, hey, you don't have to scan that table anymore.
Yeah,
and
I think
that's going to be really big.
I know approximate scares people, but if that worries you, you should try to argue with Connor Cunningham sometime about why this is bad, because he will just tell you that most of the time in your system right now, you're only getting an approximate thing because there's stuff changing in the background as it's going. So your count isn't this perfect count that you think it is.
Oh,
right?
That was my whole pre-con.
Yeah,
if you're using read committed, your data can be wrong all the time.
But even if you're not, right, the thing is, you kind of get this snapshot of what's going on, but there's people changing stuff behind you. Right. So what you think is this perfect count right now is only accurate at the beginning or end of what you've done, right? Depending on what we're doing.
It's a slice in time.
It's a slice in time, and stuff could have changed by the time you even process it in your brain off the screen. It could be different. So trying to worry about being perfect is just silly.
And it might be more honest. It might be more honest even to not be showing ballpark areas and to be showing the shape in that ballpark and not showing a specific number.
Yeah.
Than to claim you're showing the exact right number when it may not be so exact.
Right.
I think that's kind of exciting too. Also, table variables will suck less.
Yeah.
Well, now, see, that's what I still think is going to happen with the functions. I know that they've done some amazing stuff with the inline scalar, but the multi-statement table valued ones are still going to be
the way to go.
Wonky as hell. And there's all kinds of other issues in and around the functions. It's none of all of this is attempting to fix bad coding practices, and you can't fix bad coding practices.
No, wait. So, okay, this is actually the kind of debate this is what I think panel discussions are all about. So the reason that functions have been bad coding practices in SQL Server is because the optimizer hasn't been good at handling them. Functions are not, making your code modular is not a bad coding practice. No. Many languages is great, right? So what we're doing is enabling people to make more modular code without it sucking.
Right.
Hey, Kendra, can you go back to your live tweeting link?
Yeah, I was going
to
asking.
Absolutely.
Intelligent QP thread. All right, that's good.
And I essentially just kind of tweeted stuff as it came out in the session. But yeah, I am a huge fan of modular code. So, I mean, another thing to think about with how these releases are happening, like what's happening in releases in the current day is, and I think this is a really interesting shift. So used to, we would get like a big feature in SQL Server. And then if people used it a lot, we would maybe get like incremental improvements. Maybe we couldn't count on it.
Maybe. Yeah.
But what we've seen happening, especially with this intelligent query processing stuff, is really iterative improvements. So we get batch mode for column store. And then in a later release, now we're going to get batch mode for row store. So now we're like getting this magic scalar UDF inlining. And that, I think, is a great sign of like, and I haven't heard anything about this, I'm just guessing, but I'm like, oh, if they can do that for scalar functions, why can't they apply some of this same magic for multi-statement table valued functions? Like maybe we will see further iterations of this. I don't know, but
I think they will. I think they're going to fix things. I think what it is to me that we're seeing, and it's there was so much resistance to Azure when it was coming out, and so many people fought against it, and like it's bad, and it's no more DBAs and all that crap. Connor tells a story about, and I don't think he tells it this way anymore, because I suspect it's not exactly true anymore, but he used to say, like, I manage more databases than any of you will ever manage any time in your life, and I don't employ a single DBA. Yet the work that they're doing is DBA work. And I think that what they've found is that they're finding the pain that we've had. And so now they are having to go in and address things. And so that they are fixing these things like the scalar functions and all this other stuff, because they're recognizing that, no, we can't just tell people, well, don't use it. They're going to use it anyway, so we need to make it work.
So I have maybe been drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but what Grant just said is DevOps is resulting in a better product for Microsoft. That is what he just said. And
I think what Grant just said is crappy developers wrote crappy code. Now they have to live with it, so they're trying to fix it. I think that's what Grant said.
Well,
that too.
That is inherently related to DevOps. So back when I worked in a software development company and we were doing Agile, we were legitimately doing Agile, and not scare quoted, but we were doing Agile, but we weren't doing DevOps. We didn't even know what that was. We had all of these issues with support of like, yeah, we're deploying all the time, but it breaks all the time. The fix for that is making everyone support it when it breaks, not just the IT team, but like making it so that you have everyone supporting it when it breaks and everyone responsible for the releases. And that's what's happened with Microsoft and Azure. He doesn't have a team of DBAs who are the ones who have to fix it when it breaks.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a cost thing too, right? Because they're selling Azure, they get these economies of scale, right? Obviously, we see the Microsoft quarterly reports, they're making money, but if they have to have engineers spend a ton of time tuning, tweeting, fixing things, support people, there's a real cost now. There's a real cost in Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah. So very, very enjoyable to see these improvements come out. And I am now much more optimistic when it comes to the fact that we will get improvements on a lot of things. I feel like there's a lot more visibility and honesty about where we will see future improvements, and we don't end up with things that are just like a feature that was one and done, and hey, that was a great idea, but it was never implemented enough to make it work. Happy about that.
I hope.
Well,
I do too.
Well, so we got Query Store, but Query Store I think is still, it's not a great implementation, and certainly not great tooling. I think there's work to be done there, and I'm not seeing a lot of effort.
Okay.
I know there's stuff in the background happening, but they've got to smooth out edges on some of these things moving forward. So I hope they continue to do that.
Interestingly enough, it may be that Query Store has grown to a point enough where it's really useful enough for them to manage Azure, and they may not need much more for their management purposes because they've built internal tooling, I suspect, that that harnesses the power of Query Store. But until we actually have more and more people adopting it in the wild and building up a demand for this, like one of the issues for us and for the audience, like if you guys want us to build tools that hook into Query Store, if you have a need for that, we need to hear that from you, because we have developer time based on a lot of, what do customers actually want to use? And I don't hear a lot of people saying, hey, I want more tooling for my Query Store.
Because not many people are using it.
Right. Yeah. I wish I did hear more of that. So the voice of the customer really.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, so those of you listening, you should put feedback on this feedback.azure.com or something, right? There's a feedback place now, because Microsoft does read that, and we see and hear about those complaints when we're at the MVP Summit or we're at Redmond or somewhere else. So you do make a difference, but you have to complain to Microsoft and vote on things, not complain to each other or me or somebody else. Because they do discuss, like the scalar function thing. We've been hearing about that for years with Microsoft. They're working on it, and we keep going, okay, when will we actually see something?
Right, anything.
And now we have. So.
And it's big and it's all at once. I really do think this feature is like looking at it, I'm like, that is completely magic. Like, I have no idea how you did that. Like T-SQL that I can't rewrite into one query, it rewrites into one query. So
yeah, it is kind of cool what they've done.
It is neat. I won't lie. I love it. I saw it very early because Joe Sack's my editor for my book. So every once in a while I'd be like, let me show you something cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up real fast.
I can never say anything. It's always like, oh, that's awesome, and I can't tell anybody.
I'm gonna bring up Past TV real fast, and just so people know, if you want to see sessions for free from Past Summit 2018.
Wrong monitor, Kendra.
Oh yeah, I don't have it up yet, so I haven't dragged it over.
Okay.
But yeah, if also I'll put this on the screen while I'm waiting to drag this over, but there are some free sessions that you can watch. So I will bring that over shortly so people can see the list of sessions. Are there particular sessions you guys are interested in watching after this? So one that I haven't seen yet is, okay, I think I have it up here. Let me pull it over here. So if you search for Past TV, this is I can put the URL in the Q&A as well, but it's just past.org/summit/2018. If you sign in, there's a bunch of stuff. On day 3, I really want to watch this Cosmos DB session. Personally, I haven't had time to do it yet, but I'm really interested in that. You can also see my function session on there too, but right after me was this session.
Oh, David Klee, yeah, he does a great job.
Yeah. TempDB is on there too. And actually, I'm wondering now if I look here on day 1, yes, the roadmap for SQL Server contains a lot of the stuff that Steve was talking about that Bob Ward has talked about in this roadmap for SQL Server. I think actually Bob may have been involved in this session as well, that Amit and Travis were the main presenters, but that Bob was in there too. So if you want to watch some of that stuff, you can for free because it was in the live stream room.
Yeah. And day 2, there's a data viz one from Megan Longoria as well, that if you're there's some interesting Power BI ones in there, but if you're a visualization person or you have to deal with that, Megan's session I might recommend as well.
Yeah. Oh, and here's the day 2 keynote by Gragu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a containers and Bob Ward session there. So.
Ooh.
And
there it is.
Joey's container and Bob's container, so there's 2 there to watch.
Nice.
I started watching Joey's. I got to get to Bob's then.
Yeah, Joey's I think is on day 3 because Joey was at the same time, and maybe he had 2 sessions.
No, it's right there. It's right there on day 2 in the middle.
Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, there's so much in here. It's actually hard to read. And that goes into the Kubernetes pods. Kubernetes still sounds like a social disease to me.
Yeah.
Did you catch the Kubernetes? Right? I mean,
Oh, let's not do that.
Grant's like, mute her microphone. Hey, I'm just saying, you got to be careful what you name things. And that one still sounds awfully strange, but it is becoming a business word. So there we go. Okay, there's, I wasn't able to go to the Women in Tech luncheon, but I actually want to watch that afterwards. I had a conflicting event that I had to go to. So
yeah, that's actually pretty good. I caught that in there. I kind of walked in and watched that as I was trying to talk to some people, but it's interesting because it's Lori works at T-Mobile, which is a huge company, and she's actually talks about how she tries to get more people involved in just understanding what it is to be diverse and taking advantage of diversity inside of T-Mobile and then using that to grow outside a little bit. So I thought it was an interesting talk.
I love me a case study, so that immediately gets my interest in terms of making me want to watch, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the ones that really catch me in terms of business ones are the story of how we did X, Y, and Z at a given place.
So a question that just came in: is there any indication the SSRS team still exists?
Yes!
A great way to put it. But there was an indication. Day one keynote, the close on the day one keynote, hot wasabi mustard. Is that the right phrase?
So I can't believe I didn't include the slides for this, because Patrick was, I thought, the best presenter in all of the keynotes.
So Patrick LeBlanc showed some SSRS stuff that's coming out new, that you're going to be excited about.
Yeah. And Patrick LeBlanc, he admitted, he was like, and then some time passed where essentially, like your comment, where we wondered, does the SSRS team exist? But then it's back. More is happening.
To be fair, it feels like it's more the Power BI team is taking over, and they're doing a little bit of SSRS work.
Yeah,
but there is a team. They've done some things in SSRS.
Yeah, there's actually new things coming out in SSRS.
Yeah, so the day one keynote. Yeah, catch the last 30 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know where Patrick starts, but probably somewhere in around 30 minutes from the end.
Yeah, so that's on the first day there. Let me bring Past TV back up here. It's going to be in day one here in the day one keynote. So go to that and go near the end, and you can see all of the details that Patrick talked about there. So we are almost we're at 5 minutes still. So we've still got here 5 minutes, but I do want people to know that you should sign up for SQL in the City stream. So if you liked us clowning around in this format and me saying things that Grant is just like, you can see more of that. Because we are all going to the UK in December, and we are going to do SQL in the City stream together. The theme is your journey to compliant database DevOps, and it's going to be close to 5 hours of free online training with us and Kathy. Kathy is on Thanksgiving break this week, along with others from the Redgate team. So go up to redgate.com/webinars and get yourself registered. It is all free. It will be live streamed. Recordings will be up after, but you can chat with us as we go. I'll be in Slack. We'll be on Twitter. You can chat in YouTube. We'll be looking at all, and you can relay your comments and questions up to the screen as we go. So please do join us. It is a ton of fun. Also want to hype the State of Database DevOps survey. This is going on right now, and really exciting stuff is happening in terms of surprises for who will write the preface for the report. And it's someone really cool. But you can, whether or not you're a Redgate customer, we want to know just how do you do development with your databases? How often do you release? A lot of really basic things. This helps your peers put in context, hey, what is normal right now? What are other people doing? You can also win a gift card. So we would really appreciate it if you would take part in this survey. You can only do it between now and the 30th of November, because we have to start analyzing the results.
Yeah, please do it.
Yeah, even if you don't think you're doing anything, even if you're doing nothing, like it's good to know what the spectrum of people are, because if everybody's not doing anything, then you feel better about knowing everybody's not doing anything. But if everybody's doing DevOps, you're one of the few, then it gives you ammunition to talk to your boss as well. So it's just it's good to know how other people are doing. This is one of the ways that we learn in this industry, because we sometimes don't share enough.
And we publish this data. So
yeah, we publish it.
It's not like you're giving us information and we're going to hoard it. We publish this information, so you'll get it back.
Yeah,
just, in aggregate.
And we are the only people I know of who actually do anything like this when it comes to database development. There is a State of DevOps report, but in terms of the database, they only ask one or two little questions about what are you doing with the database. So this really is, I think, a service Redgate provides that is really, really important that other folks aren't doing. So participation is really, really helpful here in terms of just helping people figure out what are we doing in terms of deploying databases, what is hard, what are we getting better at? Because there was an interesting quote from the webinar, the quote that's really stuck with me from the webinar that Steve did with Gene Kim, who is involved in the State of DevOps survey, was Gene Kim said, databases are a really high spend area, but have been comparatively impoverished when it comes to how we manage deployments. And in terms of how much manual work we do. We do so much more manual work with them, which is changing, but we want to know how much it's changing. So
right.
Very important. What else? We've got 2 minutes. I haven't checked the comments yet. We've got a comment from Breck saying, the talk this morning has been very enlightening. I had a great time at PASS. It's been good to hear it. So thank you so much for that comment, Breck. And thank you all for joining us. We have another comment from Mike a little while back that said, get him, Kendra. Not entirely sure what that was in reference to, but thank you very much.
I know.
It was probably about the bad coding comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pro-function. Taking a pro-function stance, and I'm sticking with it.
There we go.
I'm anti-function until they fix them all.
Exactly.
I'm gonna put a sign in the background, pro-function. But yeah, so it is time to wrap up. And to everyone in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. Have a great week. Grant's gonna return to his vacation.
Yes. Red Dead Redemption. Let's go.
There we go.
Thanks for putting on the red shirt today, Grant, and emerging and for this webinar. Grant did take time out from his holiday to join us today, so thanks very much.
No problem.
And we will see you guys again soon. We will especially see you again on December 12th, which I am really looking forward to. So thanks for joining us. I'm going to close things up, and happy holidays to you guys having a holiday. Bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
End webinar for all.